Shock and relief. Businesses worldwide react to new Trump tariffs. Business leaders around the globe have woken up to the reality of steeper duties on exports to the U.S. market, following President Donald Trump's new order on tariffs on Thursday night. In an executive order, President Trump imposed new tariff rates on countries that failed to reach updated trade agreements with the U.S. Earlier in the week, he outlined a new framework for deals with nations that successfully negotiated revised terms. Trump's move has now reshaped America's trading relationships worldwide, with new tariffs on more than 90 countries. Here's what some of the business leaders have told the BBC about what this means for them. Mexico. While the White House raised tariffs on Canada from 25% to 35%, its other major North American trading partner, Mexico, got a 90-day reprieve, temporarily halting new duties. Jaime Chamberlain, president of fruit and vegetable company Chamberlain Distributing in Nogales, Arizona, says his company imports millions of boxes of produce from Mexico each year. We are actually very fortunate that the Mexican negotiators along with the U.S. negotiators are keeping calm and keeping cool heads, he told BBC Radio 4's Today program. Both countries really don't want to get this wrong, and if it takes 90 more days to get it right, I think it's very worthwhile. But in the absence of a deal, there's still huge uncertainty about what might happen once that 90-day extension is up. I think in the most extreme cases, many farmers would just stop farming for the export market, Chamberlain said. It would be very difficult for the importers of record like myself to continue to pay those duties for a long period of time. Thailand, which was initially staring at the possibility of a 36% levy, secured a deal to reduce the tariffs to 19%. Richard Hahn, CEO of Hana Microelectronics, one of the country's largest contract manufacturers, recalled his shock at Trump's initial announcement in April. I remember waking up in the morning, it was quite early, and seeing him standing there on the White House lawn with his board. I thought, did I see that right? 36%? How could it be, he said. But he thinks his business, which makes high-tech goods such as printed circuit boards, integrated circuits, RFID tags for pricing, can survive under the new lower tariff deal. If all of us in this region end up with around 20%, our buyers won't seek alternative suppliers. It will just be a tax, like VAT, value-added tax for U.S. consumers, Han said. Shock, chaos and a hollow win. What it's like to do a tariff deal with Trump. Italy. European leaders struck a deal, holding tariffs for most goods at 15%, after Trump initially threatened a rate double that. But that's still a substantial hike from the former average rate of 4.8%. According to the Italian Institute of International Political Studies, the agricultural, pharmaceutical and automotive sectors are likely to be hit hardest, with the country's gross domestic product, GDP, projected to dip by 0.2%. Cristiano Fini of the Italian Confederation of Farmers said the deal with the U.S. felt more like a surrender than an agreement. Several Italian trade associations are now already clamoring for compensation from the European Union to offset projected losses. EU-US tariff deal not finished yet, say Europeans unhappy with Trump's terms. What tariffs has Trump announced and why? Brazil. If the EU deal managed to blunt the worst effects of the tariffs, Brazil saw its fortunes reverse. Trump initially announced a 10% rate, but on Wednesday he raised that figure to 50%, accusing President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva of unfairly attacking U.S. tech companies, and calling the prosecution of former President Jair Bolsonaro for attempting a coup, a witch hunt. However, the higher tariff comes with some exemptions, for instance for orange juice and commercial aircraft. But other products are expected to face sharp price increases. Chicafé, Brazil's coffee exporters council, said the impact on Brazilian roasters and exporters will be significant, and warned American coffee drinkers to brace for price hikes. Brazilian producers and exporters are working on contingency plans, but Secafé said it won't be easy to find other markets for the 8.1 metric tons of coffee currently exported to the U.S. New markets are opening in Asia and the Middle East. However, according to Secafé, they won't be able to absorb all of the potential U.S. shortfall. Why Trump's tariffs on Brazil are more about political retaliation than trade. Switzerland, once optimistic about reaching a modest 10% rate, was instead hit with a 39% tariff, the highest in Europe. Just weeks ago, Switzerland's President Karin Keller-Sutter had hinted that an agreement on a 10% rate might be possible. The sudden hike has now shocked the country, as tariffs could seriously affect companies that produce pharmaceuticals, jewelry, and machine tools. With its unilateral tariff increases on Swiss industrial products, the U.S. government is sending a clear protectionist signal, machine tool industry organization Swiss Mechanics said in a statement. The government must now act with clarity and confidence. and make determined use of the existing window of opportunity for negotiations with the US. India was slapped with a 25% tariff with one additional footnote. Trump has threatened to impose an unspecified penalty over India's business dealings with Russia. India is currently among the largest buyers of Russian oil, and Trump is using tariffs as leverage to pressure Moscow over the war in Ukraine. Aurobindo Nayak, who runs CI Limited, a large tea exporter in Kolkata, says US consumers will ultimately pay the price. He told the BBC's World Business Report, "We will definitely bear the brunt, but I think the people who are really going to be hit hard are the American consumers themselves. To choose to tax tea in the United States is only going to have an inflationary effect. Assam tea has a lot of character, it is liked by the American consumers. Darjeeling tea is a specialty tea, it's not grown anywhere else. Consumption in the US is growing." Laos, one of the steepest tariff rates, 40%, has been imposed on Laos in Southeast Asia. "We are not very happy with the tariff." Laos is a very small country, said Zabandithras Phone, co-founder of sports marketing agency MKGT, and vice president of the Lao National Chamber of Commerce. Laos exports to the US only agricultural products, garments, juice and so on. Rasphone told the BBC World Service Programme Newsday that 60 companies operating in those sectors collectively employing nearly 60,000 people could be affected. Indirect jobs could be affected as well, he said, noting that the overall effect on the country's economy could be substantial. Canada. As mentioned, tariffs on are now 35%, although most goods will avoid the increased costs because they are currently exempted under an existing North American trade treaty. David Hope is the finance vice president at Hope Aero, a Canadian company that specializes in the maintenance of aircraft components. He said he rolled his eyes when he learned of Trump's latest tariffs. Even though most of their clients are not in the US, Mr. Hope explained how the integrated nature of the supply chain means their costs are still likely going up. Many of the parts the company uses come from the US, and he said he expects the vendors to soon raise their prices. "I've already got whispers regarding one of my major vendors that there's going to be a blanket 10% increase coming down the pipe," he said. Aircraft parts are made mostly of steel and aluminium, two materials under 50% tariffs. Steel and aluminium are becoming more expensive in the US, so they're going to pass those costs right along, he said. Ukraine-Russia latest. Fire at Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant contained after explosions. A fire near Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant has been extinguished after Ukrainian shelling hit one of its auxiliary facilities, the Russian-installed administration of the site said on Saturday. The International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, said its team at the plant heard explosions and saw smoke coming from a location about 1,200 meters from the perimeter. The plant's administration said on Telegram that one civilian was killed, but no plant staff or emergency workers were injured. The Zaporizhzhia facility, Europe's largest nuclear power station, is currently shut down, but still needs power to keep its fuel cool. The Russia-installed management said radiation levels remained normal and that the situation was under control. Meanwhile, Russia launched a missile attack on Kyiv early on Sunday, the military administration of the Ukrainian capital said as witnesses heard a loud blast shaking the city soon after midnight. A Ukrainian drone attack also caused fire at an oil depot in the Russian city of Sochi, regional governor Veniamin Kondratyev said. Several homes also caught fire and a woman sustained a leg injury in Voronezh, the governor said. Ukraine's drone attack sparks fire at oil depot in Russia's Sochi, governor says. More than 120 firefighters were trying to extinguish a fire at an oil depot in the Russian city of Sochi that was sparked by an Ukrainian drone attack, regional governor Veniamin Kondratyev said early on Sunday on the Telegram messaging app. Rosaviatsia, Russia's civil aviation authority, said on Telegram that flights were halted at the city's airport to ensure air safety. Zelensky praised for restoring independence of Ukraine's anti-graft investigators amid first major protests since Russian invasion. Ukraine's European allies praised Volodymyr Zelensky's move to restore independence of Ukraine's anti-graft investigators and prosecutors, after having voiced concerns about the original stripping of the agency's status. Top European officials had told Mr. Zelensky that Ukraine was jeopardizing its bid for European Union membership by curbing the powers of its anti-graft authorities. It is important that anti-corruption institutions operate independently, and the law adopted on Thursday guarantees them every opportunity for a real fight against corruption, Mr. Zelensky wrote on Saturday after meeting the heads of the agencies, who briefed him on the latest investigation. Ukraine uncovers major corruption scheme in military drone procurement. Ukraine's anti-corruption bodies said on Saturday they had uncovered a major graft scheme that procured military drones and signal jamming systems at inflated prices, 2 days after the agency's independence was restored following major protests. The independence of Ukraine's anti-graft investigators and prosecutors, NABU and SAPO, was reinstated by Parliament on Thursday after a move to take it away resulted in the country's biggest demonstrations since Russia's invasion in 2022. In a statement published by both agencies on social media, NABU and SAPO said they had caught a sitting lawmaker, 2 local officials, and an unspecified number of National Guard personnel taking bribes. None of them were identified in the statement. The essence of the scheme was to conclude state contracts with supplier companies at deliberately inflated prices, it said, adding that the offenders had received kickbacks of up to 30% of a contract's cost. 4 people had been arrested. There can only be zero tolerance for corruption, clear teamwork to expose corruption, and as a result a just sentence, President Volodymyr Zelensky wrote on Telegram. Mr. Zelensky, who has far-reaching wartime presidential powers and still enjoys broad approval among Ukrainians, was forced into a rare political about-face when his attempt to bring NABU and SAPO under the control of his prosecutor general sparked the first nationwide protests of the war. He subsequently said that he had heard the people's anger and submitted a bill restoring the agency's former independence, which was voted through by Parliament on Thursday. Russia says it destroyed about 15 Ukrainian drones. Russian air defense units destroyed about 15 Ukrainian drones over Voronezh, the governor, Alexander Gusev, wrote on the Telegram messaging app. The overnight attack resulted in several homes and utility buildings catching fire from falling drone debris, and a woman was injured, the governor of the southern Russian region said on Sunday. The threat of further drone attacks remains, Mr. Gusev said in the Post early on Sunday. Both sides deny targeting civilians in their strike in the war that Russia launched with a full-scale invasion on Ukraine in February 2022. Kiev says that its attacks inside Russia are aimed at destroying infrastructure key to Moscow's war efforts and are in response to Russia's relentless strikes on Ukraine. The Russian Defense Ministry said that its units destroyed 41 drones just before midnight on Saturday over Russian regions bordering Ukraine and over the waters of the Black Sea. Woman injured in Russia in Ukrainian attack. A Ukrainian drone strike reportedly injured a woman and sparked multiple fires in Russia's southern Voronezh region, the local governor said today. Meanwhile, Russia launched a missile attack on Kyiv, according to the Ukrainian capital's military administration. Russia launches new missile strike on Kyiv. Russia fired a missile at Kyiv early today, the city's military administration said on Telegram. Reuters witnesses described a loud explosion that shook the capital shortly after midnight. The strike comes just days after Russia carried out its deadliest aerial assault on Kyiv this year, which left at least 31 people dead, including 5 children, and wounded more than 150. Putin not ready to seriously negotiate, says Lamy. Vladimir Putin is not ready for serious negotiations on peace in Ukraine, UK Foreign Secretary David Lammy has said in an interview with The Guardian. My sober assessment is that Putin is not ready to seriously negotiate, Mr. Lammy told the outlet. He still has maximalist and imperialist ambitions. The battle Ukraine has fought, with UK, European and American support, is immense. The Foreign Secretary also spoke of his admiration of the Ukrainian people. Even if the world left them behind, they'd still be waging a guerrilla war, such as their belief in their country. It's deeply inspiring, he said. Fire at Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant, brought under control, Russian authorities say. A fire that broke out near the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant after Ukrainian shelling has been brought under control. The Russian-installed administration of the Russia-held plant in Ukraine said on Saturday. Russian forces seized the Zaporizhzhia plant in the first weeks of Russia's February 2022 invasion of Ukraine. Both sides have accused each other of firing or taking other actions that could trigger a nuclear accident. The plant's administration said on Telegram that a civilian had been killed in the shelling, but that no plant employees or members of the emergency services had been injured. The station, Europe's biggest nuclear power plant, is not operating but still requires power to keep its nuclear fuel cool. The plant's Russia-installed management said radiation levels remained within normal levels and the situation was under control. Russia says its forces captured Oleksandra Kalinova in eastern Ukraine. Russia's defense ministry said Russian forces had captured the village of Oleksandro-Kalinove in Ukraine's eastern Donetsk region on Saturday. The battlefield report was not immediately verified. Atomic Agency reports hearing explosions near Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant. The International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, said on Saturday that its team at Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, ZNPP, heard explosions and saw smoke coming from a nearby location. The nuclear plant said one of its auxiliary facilities was attacked today, IAEA said in a statement. The auxiliary facility is located 1,200 meters from the ZNPP's site perimeter, and the IAEA team could still see smoke from that direction in the afternoon, the nuclear watchdog said.